Fear is like a fire that can both warm us and burn us.
Fear is just a shadow that projects itself much larger than the object that creates it.
When we recognize our weaknesses with compassion, we are not surrendering to them.
True freedom comes when we learn to embrace fear as part of our experience.
Hello, I'm Ruby and Oliver, and today I have the honor of welcoming two of the greatest spiritual masters of all time, Paramahansa Yogananda and the great Master Osho. We are gathered to dive into a topic that deeply touches each of us: fear. In Fear is the Worst Illusion, we will explore 10 ancestral lessons that can completely transform your relationship with your fears and revolutionize your life. You will discover why fear is considered the greatest illusion of the human mind, and how we can use this understanding to free ourselves. We will explore everything from the most basic fears to those that silently paralyze us, preventing our evolution. Throughout this meeting, you will learn ancient techniques to transcend your fears, discover the difference between protective and limiting fear, and understand how self-compassion can be your greatest ally on this journey. Get ready for a true internal revolution. Let's start our conversation with an intriguing question that we have all faced. Yogananda, is fear a natural emotion that protects us from danger, or an illusion created by the mind that prevents us from living fully?
Rubian, fear is a fascinating emotion that carries an interesting duality. At its core, it functions as a natural protective mechanism, an alert system that keeps us safe in the face of real threats. It's like a vigilant guardian that warns us when there is imminent danger. However, the question becomes more complex when we observe how our mind can transform this protective mechanism into something limiting. Think of a young person who dreams of climbing the Himalayan mountains in search of a master. The desire burns in their heart, but their mind begins to create scenarios of doubt. What if I fail? What if the path is too difficult? It's like a fire that can both warm us and burn us. Fear can be our protection or our prison. The key is to learn to observe it without letting it dominate us, developing the ability to discern between real threats and mental constructs that only hinder our growth. The balance lies in recognizing fear as a natural part of the human experience, wisely using it as protection while working to transcend its limitations on our spiritual journey.
What a profound perspective, Yogananda. And you, Osho, how do you see this duality of fear in our lives?
Look, Rubian, fear is indeed a dual force in our existence. On one hand, it acts as a vital protective mechanism for our survival. But often, it exceeds its original function and transforms into an illusion that paralyzes us. Imagine walking through a forest. The sound of a twig snapping can awaken an instinctive fear, a useful and protective response. However, if that fear transforms into a constant state of alertness, causing you to completely avoid the forest, it has ceased to be a guide and has become a prison. The key lies in awareness. Through practices like meditation, we can learn to recognize fear, observe how it manifests, and question its validity. When we develop this deeper understanding, the chains that fear imposes begin to unravel, allowing us to live more fully.
Extraordinary how both views complement each other. While Yogananda shows us fear as a fire that can both warm and burn, Osho reminds us that awareness is the key to transforming it from a prison into an ally. Let's move on to our next question. But before we continue, let me give you an amazing tip. Did you know it's very easy to get ahead of 99% of people, succeeding in everything you want for your life? I'll leave a link in the first comment below to a book that changed my perspective on many aspects of my mind, and that has been helping thousands of people find clarity and confidence to achieve their goals and dreams. Don't miss it. I'm sure you'll love it. Now, this question is particularly interesting, especially after our discussion about the dual nature of fear. Yogananda, how can we differentiate between the fear that protects us from real danger and the fear that paralyzes us and prevents us from growing?
Rubian, imagine fear as a lighthouse in the darkness. It can guide us and alert us to real dangers. When you are about to cross a busy street without looking, for example, it is that protective fear that makes you stop and assess the situation. But there is also that insidious fear, which acts like an invisible anchor, keeping us stuck in our comfort zone. Think of someone who is afraid of public speaking. that fear can prevent the sharing of valuable ideas and meaningful connections without any real threat. To differentiate them, pay close attention to your sensations. If fear makes you hesitate in the face of a concrete danger, you are tuned into your protective intuition. But if it prevents you from seeking growth opportunities, like starting a new career or enrolling in a course, it's time to question, what is really the worst that could happen? Self-reflection is crucial in this process. Often, these fears are merely reflections of past experiences or limiting beliefs. When we identify them, we can transform them into impetus for change and action.
Fascinating, this distinction, Osho. And in your view, how can we recognize when fear is protecting us and when it is merely preventing us from evolving?
Rubian, we first need to understand that fear is a natural programming for our survival. Like a sophisticated alarm system, it can alert us when there is real danger, like when we encounter a truly threatening situation. However, there is that fear that arises from our insecurities and uncertainties, often fueled by limiting beliefs or past traumas. It's like a shadow that projects itself much larger than the object that creates it. The key to differentiating them lies in awareness. When we observe our fears without judgment, we can identify what is truly a threat to our well-being and what is merely a reflection of our internal anxieties. A valuable exercise is to question, is this fear protecting me from something real, or is it preventing me from moving forward? Through self-observation and meditative practice, we can develop this clarity that allows us to distinguish the fears that serve us from those that limit us, thus transforming paralyzing fears into opportunities for growth.
Amazing how each perspective illuminates a different aspect of this issue. Awareness and self-knowledge seem to truly be the keys to this differentiation. And for you who are noticing the quality of this conversation and the depth and importance of what we are discussing here, please help us by leaving your like and also comment on what you would like to see here on our channel. I sincerely appreciate your help. After these deep reflections on the nature of fear, we arrive at a crucial point. Yogananda, when we say that fear is not something to fight against, but something to understand, is this approach really sufficient to overcome deep and paralyzing fears?
Rubian, understanding fear is a transformative step, but it is only the beginning of the journey. Look, when we encounter fear, our first reaction is often to fight against it or try to hide it under the rug. But this only increases our internal resistance and can intensify the paralysis. It's like a boy who is afraid of the dark. When we finally muster the courage to turn on the light, we realize that the terrifying monster was just the shadow of a chair. Our deep fears work like this. They are often ghosts created by our own experiences and distorted perceptions. However, understanding alone is not enough. It needs to be accompanied by practical actions and an environment of emotional support. Kriya Yoga, for example, helps us connect with our true essence, and it is through this constant practice that we can not only recognize our fears, but transcend them. So, while understanding fear is powerful, we need to go beyond, transforming that understanding into action and integrating what we learn about ourselves. Only then can paralyzing fears transform from barriers into trampolines for our growth.
What an enlightening perspective, Osho. And for you, is this approach of understanding fear, instead of fighting it, sufficient for us to overcome our deepest fears?
It is essential to understand, Rubian, that treating fear as an enemy to be defeated only increases our internal resistance. Imagine fear as a shadow behind you. The more you try to ignore it, the bigger it seems to get. But when you turn to observe it with curiosity, you realize it's not as scary as you imagined. Self-observation and reflection are fundamental in this process. We need to ask ourselves, why does this scare me? What am I really feeling? This investigation brings to light the roots of fear, allowing us to confront it consciously. Meditation is a powerful tool on this path, as it not only silences the mind but teaches us to observe with compassion. When a deep fear emerges, we have internal resources to embrace it, rather than being swept away by the wave of panic. True freedom comes when we learn to embrace fear as part of our human experience, recognizing that it exists but does not define who we are. Thus, fears transform from obstacles into opportunities for self-knowledge.
What a beautiful synthesis of wisdom. The transformation of fear seems to require a combination of understanding, action, and constant practice. Let's continue exploring. Continuing our exploration of emotions and personal transformation, we arrive at a very relevant question. Yogananda, is self-compassion truly an effective antidote to the fear of failure? Or can it end up becoming a way for us to settle into our weaknesses?
Rubian, genuine self-compassion is like an internal hug that strengthens us, not weakens us. Imagine yourself in a drifting boat on a stormy sea. Instead of fighting against the waves or blaming yourself for the storm, you allow yourself to feel the fear, but you also treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend in trouble. This doesn't mean standing still and waiting for the storm to pass. True self-compassion gives us the emotional security needed to navigate turbulent waters with courage and determination. When we recognize our weaknesses with compassion, we are not surrendering to them, but creating space for learning and growth. It is essential not to confuse self-compassion with self-indulgence. When genuinely practiced, it drives us to act with intention and determination, recognizing where we can improve, but always with love and understanding. It's a delicate balance between embracing our imperfections and challenging ourselves to evolve.
What an enlightening perspective. And you, Osho, how do you see this relationship between self-compassion and overcoming the fear of failure?
You see, Rubian, self-compassion is a force that arises from awareness and courage. It's like caring for a plant. It needs the right amount of light and water to flourish. Similarly, when we look at our imperfections and weaknesses with kindness, we create an internal environment conducive to growth. It's not about complacency or settling. It's an opportunity to recognize ourselves in our failures without sinking into self-punishment. With self-compassion, we begin to see failure not as an end, but as a natural part of the evolution process. The key lies in balance. If we are superficially indulgent, we may become complacent. True self-compassion involves perception and insight. We recognize our limitations while maintaining the motivation to overcome them. It's like rainwater, essential for life, but also representing the need for active and continuous growth.
Fascinating how both perspectives show us that self-compassion is, in fact, a transformative force when practiced with wisdom and balance. Let's move on. After these deep reflections on fear and self-compassion, we arrive at a fundamental question of the human experience. Yogananda, is suffering an inevitable part of our journey or merely a consequence of our resistance to reality?
Rubian, that's a fascinating question that leads us to reflect on the very nature of human experience. Suffering has an interesting duality. It is, in some ways, inevitable at certain moments in life, but it can also be intensified by our resistance to what is happening. Think of life as a dance. When we try to control every movement, we become rigid and lose our natural fluidity. It's as if we are constantly trying to choreograph every step, instead of allowing ourselves to flow with the rhythm of the music. The pain we feel when we lose someone we love, for example, is real and necessary. It's a reflection of the love we shared. But when we resist that experience, when we close ourselves off from the natural process of grief, we end up creating additional layers of suffering. True wisdom lies in recognizing suffering as a valuable teacher, challenging us to grow and seek deeper emotional understanding. Through spiritual practice and meditation, we can learn to navigate these experiences, transforming suffering into growth instead of becoming prisoners of our resistances.
What a profound perspective, Osho. And in your view, how can we understand this relationship between suffering and our resistance to reality?
Rubian, in fact, suffering is not an inevitable part of the human experience. It primarily arises from our resistance to reality. When we distance ourselves from our true essence and overly identify with our minds and emotions, we create a cycle of dissatisfaction and pain. It's like trying to swim against a strong current. The more we resist, the more we wear ourselves out. The real challenge lies in recognizing when we are creating this resistance and learning to flow with life as it presents itself. Awareness is key in this process. When we allow ourselves to observe and accept reality as it is, without trying to control or deny it, we open up space for genuine inner transformation. Suffering then reveals itself as a reflection of our disconnection from our true nature.
What illuminating complementary perspectives. While Yogananda shows us the value of suffering as a teacher, Osho reminds us that we can transcend it through acceptance and awareness. Let's move on to our next question. Let's address a question that deeply touches our human experience. Yogananda, if impermanence is a universal law, why do we cling so much to people, situations, and things, even knowing that everything is temporary?
Rubian, this is a fascinating aspect of our human nature. Attachment arises from our deep desire for connection and meaning. When we find something or someone that touches our heart, it's natural to want to preserve that experience. It's like when we find a special place in nature, a crystal clear stream surrounded by wildflowers. Even knowing that in the next season the flowers may not be there, or that the stream may dry up, we still want to capture that moment, to keep it forever. Attachment also reflects our deepest fears and insecurities. We fear loneliness, the emptiness that may arise when things change. Instead of accepting the transient nature of life, we create stronger and stronger ties, as if we could prevent the inevitable flow of existence. True wisdom lies in finding the balance between living each connection intensely and understanding its temporary nature. It's an invitation to celebrate the present without the weight of the need to possess it forever.
A very sensitive perspective, Yogananda. And you, Osho? How do you see this human tendency to attach, even in the face of inevitable impermanence?
Rubian, our attachment arises from a state of unconsciousness regarding the true nature of reality. We seek security and stability in a world that is in constant transformation, as if we were trying to build a permanent house on shifting sands. When we create deep bonds, whether with people or situations, we often confuse attachment with love. It's like a child clutching their favorite toy. It's not the object itself that causes the pain of loss, but the meaning and security it represents. Accepting impermanence doesn't mean living with less love or intensity. On the contrary, when we understand the transient nature of everything, each moment becomes more precious, each encounter more meaningful. It's an opportunity to live fully in the present, without the chains of attachment that bind us to the past or anxiously project us into the future.
What beautiful reflections. Attachment does seem to be a reflection of our search for meaning in a constantly changing world. Let's continue exploring. We have arrived at a very delicate question that deeply touches our relationship with suffering. Yogananda, when we say the discomfort you feel now is not permanent, is this really a genuine comfort, or are we just minimizing the severity of suffering?
Rubian, this is a deep reflection on how we deal with pain. This statement carries a fundamental truth about the transient nature of all human experiences. It's like a compassionate reminder that, even in the darkest nights, dawn always arrives. However, this does not mean diminishing or denying the intensity of what someone is feeling in the moment. When we are immersed in deep pain, it may feel like that state will last forever. It's natural to feel this way. It's part of the human experience. The beauty of this understanding lies in offering us hope and perspective, without invalidating our feelings. It's an invitation to observe the natural cycle of life, where each experience, no matter how intense, is part of a larger journey of transformation and growth. Recognizing the impermanence of suffering helps us not to identify completely with it, creating space for healing and renewal.
A very sensitive perspective, Osho. How do you see this issue? Is remembering the impermanence of suffering truly comforting, or can it sound like a way to minimize pain?
You see, Rubian, this statement can be a portal to a deeper understanding of our experience. When we understand that suffering, like everything in life, is transient, we are not denying its intensity, we are opening ourselves to a broader perspective of existence. It's like observing the flow of a river. The waters are never the same, they are in constant motion. Similarly, our emotions and mental states also flow naturally. When we cling to the idea that suffering is permanent, we create a mental prison that only intensifies our pain. The awareness of impermanence invites us to a deeper acceptance of the present moment, allowing the light of understanding to illuminate our darkest moments. It is not a denial, but an invitation to transformation through acceptance and understanding.
What a powerful synthesis. It makes me realize that recognizing the transient nature of suffering does not minimize it, but rather opens space for hope and transformation. Now we come to a crucial point in our conversation. Yogananda, when we say that fear is just a thought, does that really help us in the face of real and imminent danger, or is it an excessive simplification?
Rubian, this idea deserves deep reflection. Fear, at its core, is a mental construct that can truly distort our perception of reality. Think of a storm forming. As the sky darkens and the winds begin to blow, fear can paralyze us, preventing sensible actions that could protect us. When we manage to observe fear as a thought, something we can examine without fully identifying with it, we gain valuable freedom. It's like that young person who feared the dark. Every shadow seemed a mortal threat until a wise person showed him that the real danger was not in the darkness itself, but in how he interpreted it. It is liberating to understand that, often, fear is just our interpretation of reality. This allows us to respond to situations with clarity, rather than reacting automatically. However, it is crucial to recognize that there are real dangers, where the instinct for protection is vital. The wisdom lies in balancing the mind, allowing the awareness of the present moment to guide us, distinguishing when fear is an important warning and when it is just a thought we can transcend.
What a deep analysis, Osho. And in your view, how can we balance this understanding of fear as thought with situations of real danger?
Rubian, understanding fear as thought is actually a doorway to a deeper understanding of our internal experience. Fear often arises as a result of mental projections, often distorted, about possible events. It is a response that emerges from the unconscious and past conditioning. When we face a real threat, fear can be a valuable defense mechanism. The key lies in how we respond to it. A mind dominated by irrational thoughts can paralyze us or lead to impulsive reactions. But when we observe fear with awareness, we find clarity for a more appropriate response. It's similar to an experienced climber. He recognizes the real danger, but does not allow fear to dominate him. Through awareness, he makes sensible decisions while staying centered. Thus, recognizing fear as thought is not simplistic, but an invitation for us to develop a deeper understanding of how to manage it wisely.
Fascinating how both perspectives show us that the key is not to deny fear, but to develop the wisdom to navigate through it with awareness and balance. Now we come to a fascinating point in our conversation. Yogananda, is letting go of control really an act of wisdom, or can it be a subtle way of escaping our responsibilities?
Rubian, letting go of control is, in fact, a profound act of wisdom that requires more courage than it appears. Imagine a sailor at sea. He can desperately cling to the helm, struggling against the currents, or learn to navigate in harmony with them, trusting in the strength of the wind and the wisdom of the ocean. This practice does not mean abandoning our responsibilities. On the contrary, it represents a mature understanding that not everything is under our control. It is recognizing that we can do our best, but that the final outcome is often in dialogue with greater forces of life. When we free ourselves from this obsessive need for control, we open space for new possibilities and learnings, allowing experiences to shape and guide us. This surrender becomes an act of courage and wisdom, as well as a form of spiritual growth.
A very interesting perspective, Osho. How do you see this relationship between letting go of control and taking responsibility?
Look, Rubian, letting go of control is an action that arises from awareness, not from fear or escape. It's like a gardener who understands his role. He cannot control every leaf that sprouts, but he has the responsibility to provide the water, light, and nutrients necessary for growth. When we cling to control, we often act out of fear and insecurity, turning life into a constant struggle. True wisdom lies in recognizing that we cannot control everything, but we can take responsibility for our reactions and choices. By consciously letting go of control, we free ourselves from the need for perfection and begin to embrace the beauty of imperfection, which is where life truly flourishes. It is a way to connect more deeply with our essence and with the natural flow of existence.
What a beautiful contrast of perspectives. It makes me realize that letting go of control is not abandonment, but rather a wiser and more conscious way to participate in the flow of life. We have reached a crucial point in our conversation, especially relevant today. Yogananda, how can we cultivate patience in a society that values instant gratification and speed above all?
Rubian, cultivating patience in today's world is like nurturing a rare plant in the midst of a dense forest. It requires dedication, experience, and a touch of special wisdom. We can start by establishing small pauses in our daily lives. When we find ourselves pressured by constant urgency, we can transform each moment of waiting into an opportunity for growth. It's like learning to appreciate the silence between the notes of a song. Each pause has its purpose and beauty. Instant gratification is similar to a fast meal. It satisfies momentarily, but does not truly nourish. Therefore, it is important to value activities that require time and dedication, such as learning a new musical instrument or the art of painting. These practices teach us to value the process, not just the result. Finally, observe nature. It teaches us that there is a unique beauty in each stage of development. A flower does not rush to bloom. A river follows its natural course without haste. This universal wisdom shows us what truly matters.
What an enriching perspective. And you, Osho, how do you see this possibility of developing patience in such a fast-paced world?
Rubian, in a society obsessed with speed, cultivating patience becomes a revolutionary act. It's like a serene observer who can maintain their peace even amidst the chaos of a bustling city. To develop patience, we first need to nurture a full awareness of the present. Meditation becomes a precious refuge, a space where we can silence the mind and recognize the beauty of each moment. Each conscious breath reconnects us with the natural rhythm of life. When we face situations that require waiting, whether waiting for an important response or seeing a project mature, we can transform them into opportunities for practice. Instead of resisting, we can observe our emotions and allow the wisdom of the moment to guide us. The key is to nourish our curiosity about the process, not just the outcome. Thus, patience becomes a virtue that enriches our experiences and connects us more deeply with the natural flow of life.
Incredible how each perspective brings us a different aspect of this much-needed virtue. Patience truly seems to be a path of personal transformation. Wow, what an amazing conversation we had today. We were able to deeply explore the nature of fear and how it influences our lives. I'm immensely grateful to the Masters Yogananda and Osho for sharing such profound and transformative wisdom with us. It was truly special to have you here, bringing such rich and complementary perspectives on themes that we all face in our journey. I sincerely hope to welcome you back to our podcast to continue these valuable reflections. And you who have made it this far, you can already see on the screen 2 videos from our channel that perfectly complement this theme. Just click on the video image that interests you the most. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We always bring deep topics like this, which can truly transform your way of seeing life and dealing with your challenges. Thank you for watching until now, and I wish you to be free from everything that takes away your peace.